Welcome to the video tutorial for the Textured Beads 2 fingerless gloves. This is a modified pattern from one that I previously published about 2 years ago. I used fewer different types of stitches and just an overall sleeker design. This pattern has different areas of mainly puff stitch separated by just the right amount of texture. And on the bottom, we have a beautiful snug ribbed cuff. Here's a list of the stitches that we'll be using today. Looks like a lot, but really most of them are very basic. I do my puff stitch a little bit differently, and I'll be sure and go over that with you, as well as a few of the other ones that you might not be quite so familiar with. The materials we'll be using are a 4-ounce yarn, a 6.0 millimeter hook, a 6.5 millimeter hook, and you might want to use a stitch marker. That part's optional. So if you're ready, let's begin. We'll start with our cuff. Okay, to start our cuff, I'm using a 6.0 millimeter hook and a 4-ounce yarn, like I said, and I've got a slip knot on my hook. So just like I always do when I make my cuffs, we're going to start by chaining 13, just 13 plain old chains, and then when we work back down with our single crochets, we'll have a stitch count of 12. So go ahead and make your 13 chains, and then I'll pick you up and we'll work back down with our single crochets. See you for that. Okay, here's my 13 chains. And like I said, when we work back down, we'll have a stitch count of 12. So all we're going to do is place a single crochet in each of these chains back down. Should have a stitch count of 12. And you know I'm a no stress crocheter, so if you get to the end and you only have 11, just stick another one in that end chain. Or if you have an extra chain, either use it or just leave it out there. It's not going to make that much difference. But go ahead and put a single crochet in each of these chains back down. Then we're going to start the ribbing part of our cuff. So single crochet each of your chains back down, and we'll start the ribbing part after that. Okay, so here's my 12 single crochets that's going to start our cuff. From here on out, we're going to mainly be working in single crochet back loop only. Every time we reach the end, we're going to chain one and turn. Even if I don't say it, we need to chain one and turn. So we're going to start the ribbing part. We've got 12 stitches. Our first stitch, our last stitch are going to be regular single crochets. So let's go ahead and do that. Regular single crochet, like that. Our middle 10 stitches are going to be single crochet back loop only. So here's the front loop, here's the back loop. Normally, you go under both of those, but we have a front loop and a back loop. So single crochet back loop only is exactly what it says. So you put your hook in the back loop only of those two, draw up your yarn, and do your single crochet. Let's do it again. Here's the front loop, here's the back loop. Put your hook in that back loop, draw your yarn up, and work your single crochet. So single crochet back loop only. And you'll do that in stitches 2 through 11, and the very last stitch will be like the first one. We'll put a regular single crochet. So regular single crochet first stitch, single crochet back loop only until you reach the end, and put a regular single crochet in that last stitch. So I'll pick you up for that, and we'll work it maybe one more time before we do several rows off camera, and then pick you back up. Okay, I'm reaching the end of my first row where we're working in the back loop. I put the regular single crochet in the first one. I've done 10 single crochet back loops only, and I'm in my final stitch where we place a regular single crochet through both of those loops. So we'll do this for every single row. Regular single crochet first and last, single crochet back loop only in the middle 10. And like I said, at the end of every one, we're going to chain one and turn, and just do the same thing. Now I'm going to make 30 rows. That fits my wrist. It's around 7 1/4, 7.5 inches. Pretty average, adult female wrist, I guess. Do it as long as you need to do. Wrap it around your wrist when you think it's getting close. You don't want it to be loose, but you don't want it to be super tight either. You just want it to be snug because this is going to be very stretchy. The ribbing makes it very stretchy. So work your rows. Again, I'm going to do about 30. Single crochet first stitch and last stitch, single crochet back loop only in the middle 10. I'll go ahead and work maybe 8 or 10 more rows and catch back up with you to show you how it's looking, and you can see the nice stretchy ribbing that'll start forming. It's a little awkward at first. You don't have a whole lot to hold on to, but it's going to get a lot easier the more rows you do. So go on with that. I'll pick you up in just a little bit, and we'll see how it's looking. So I'll see you then. Okay, here's just a quick check-in to show you my progress so far. I think I've done maybe 13 rows, but you can obviously see the nice ribbing here. It's kind of the same on both sides, but it's super stretchy and it holds its shape. So like I said, I've done maybe, I don't know, 11, 12, 13 rows, and I'm going to go out to 30. So I just wanted to have a quick check so you can see my progress. Here it is on the other side. Sometimes you like one side more than the other, but there's really not that much difference. So continue on, single crochet first stitch, single crochet last stitch, single crochet back loop only in the middle, chain 1 and turn, do it again. And I'll see you when I'm near the end of my row 30, and we'll join our short sides together to make our cuff before we move on to the glove. So I'll see you then. Okay, here's my 30 rows for my cuff. See the nice ribbing, it's on both sides, very stretchy, very nice. So what we're going to do, pick whichever you want your right side to be. There's not that much difference. And with the right side facing you, bring your short ends together, and what we're going to do is we're just going to slip stitch through each of these all the way down to form a seam to form our cuff. You can use a darning needle, but then you'd have to cut your yarn and all that. So I think it's just as easier to do a slip stitch. So all you do, put your hook in the first stitch on this side, first stitch on that side, pull your yarn through both sides, and slip stitch. It's kind of awkward to see how I'm doing this, but put it in each stitch. I'm on the second stitch on one side, I put it in the second stitch on the other side. Third stitch over here, third stitch over there. Pull it through, slip stitch. Forms a nice tight seam. I mean, these are gloves and this is the cuff, so it's going to be stretched around your wrist, so you want to have a nice tight seam so there's no gaps or anything. So slip stitch every stitch all the way down. I have 12 stitches, so my stitch count was 12, so I'll have 12 slip stitches. Do it all the way down. When you reach the end, we're going to turn it inside out and we can start our glove. So slip stitch all the way down, and I'll see you at the end, and we'll flip it around and we'll start our glove. Okay, I just finished my 12th slip stitch, joining my short sides together. I'm actually going to go ahead and chain 1 just to kind of secure that last one. Then all we do is we flip it right side out, kind of work out that edge there. And here's our cuff. Super cute cuff, I think. This is where I said you could use an optional stitch marker. So I'm going to explain our stitch count for this glove. A lot of my gloves, the stitch count doesn't really matter. This one, it does. Your stitch count for each row needs to be a multiple of 5 plus 1. So if you're making one a little on the smaller side, it would probably be 26. 5 times 5 is 25 plus 1 is 26. I'm doing a stitch count of 31. If you wanted like an extra large, you would do 36. I'm doing 31, which works out well for me because I had 30 rows of cuff. So for this very last part, I kind of count this row as part of the cuff. Very last part, we're just going to place evenly around, as evenly as possible, a single crochet. And it has to be whatever stitch count you're going to use, which for me is 31. So Sometimes I will use a stitch marker for that. I fold it in half. Here's my first stitch, and I just fold it out that way. I'll take a stitch marker and I'll stick it in that opposite side like that. So now I know that from my first stitch to this marker, which is halfway around, I'm going to have 15 or 16 stitches because mine's going to be an uneven number. So if I do 15 stitches from here to here, I'll need 16 from here to here, or the other way around. I can do 16 and then 15. You don't have to do that. It's just a visual. If I get here and I'm only on like 12 or 13, I'm spaced apart too far and I'll have to redo it. So place a single crochet as evenly as you can around the top of this cuff so that it meets your stitch count. Again, mine's going to be 31. Single crochet all the way around. We're still with our 6.0 hook. After this row, we'll go up a hook size. Single crochet all the way around to meet your stitch count, probably 26, 31, or 36, I guess. Mine's going to be 31. So I'll see you at the end when I'm nearing the end of my single crochet each stitch around here, and I'll show you how each row we're going to slip stitch to join. So I'll see you for that. Okay, we've been placing a single crochet as even as we can all the way around the top of our cuff. I'm going for a stitch count of 31, so I'm right near the end. This is 28, or maybe, let's see, yeah. Actually, that was 29, that's 30, and this is 31. Okay, so that's my 31. Every single row, no matter what stitch we're using, we're going to slip stitch to join in our first stitch. Sometimes you slip stitch to join in a chain or something, but we're going to slip stitch every row in our very first stitch, and we're going to chain one. So I hope you didn't stress too much about it evenly placing. That used to really kind of freak me out. It doesn't have to be exactly even. It's all going to even out in the end. So we placed a single crochet all the way around the top of our cuff to equal our stitch count. Mine was 31. And we slip stitch to join in that very first single crochet. Now we're going to get rid of this 6.0 hook and we're going to our 6.5. So from here on out, we're going to start building our glove. So I will see you back for row 1 and we'll start our glove. See you then. Okay, we're going to start our glove. First of all, let me say something about my hook. From my last video, I used this hook, and I had a lot of people comment and ask me about this hook. I got it at Hobby Lobby. It might even be their store brand. But if you have a Hobby Lobby near you, or go online, and you can get them there. And this, we have switched to a 6.5. And we're going to start our glove. Now, every row, we're going to start in our same stitch as we slip stitch to join. So let's start row 1. This is really a very simple pattern. When your glove is finished, it's not going to look like it was simple, but it really is. So let's start. So for row 1, and we're going to be repeating this row 2 or 3 times. We start with a single crochet. It's a very simple sequence. Single crochet, chain 1. When we chain 1, we're going to skip 1. We'll skip this next stitch and do another single crochet. So we have a single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, another single crochet. The next stitch is kind of my rendition of a puff stitch. It's probably not the crochet textbook puff stitch, but it works well for this glove. We're going to end up with 7 loops on our hook. To achieve that, you'll yarn over, go into your stitch, draw 1 up. We have 3. Yarn over, go through that same stitch, pull it up. We have 5. Do that one more time. Yarn over, go through, pull up your loop. We have 7 loops on our hook. Yarn over, grab your yarn, pull it through all 7. Kind of pull it. To close this stitch, you do a chain. That will be counting as a stitch. So like we did back here, when we chain one, we skip one. Then we start it all over again. That's the sequence for this row. We'll do it one more time. Single crochet, oops, chain one, skip one, single crochet, and then our puff stitch. You yarn over, pull up a loop, you have 3. Yarn over, pull up a loop, you have 5. Yarn over, one more time, back in that same stitch, pull it up, we have 7 loops on our hook. Yarn over, pull it all the way through. Kind of give it a little yank, chain 1. Do that all the way around. We'll do it one more time. Since we chained, we skip. So our sequence is single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet. I gotta get some yarn. Hang on for me here. Single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet. Wrap around, go into your stitch, pull it up, 3 loops. Yarn over, back in that same stitch, pull it up, 5 loops. Yarn over, back in that same stitch, pull it up, 7 loops. Yarn over, pull it through all 7, chain 1. We're going to do that all the way around. I'll pick you up at the end, show you one more time how we're going to slip stitch to join in that first stitch, and I'll see you at the end before we move on to chain 2. So I'll see you, or row 2. So I'll see you then. Okay, I'm nearing the end of row 1, and I'm on the stitch where I do my puff stitch. So yarn over, I know y'all are getting tired of me saying that. 3 loops, yarn over, 5 loops, yarn over, 7 loops, pull it all the way through, give it a little pull, chain 1. We only have 2 stitches left, but we chained 1, so we skip 1. Our last stitch of this row with this sequence is our very first single crochet of the sequence. So that's the end of our first row with our puffs. So like I said before, every end of every row, can you see this? We're going to slip stitch to join in this first stitch. No matter what our stitch is, it won't always be a single crochet. But at the end of every row, we're going to slip stitch to join in our first stitch. And we'll chain 1. If I forget to tell you to chain 1, go ahead and do it anyway. So that's the end of row 1. You can see our little puffs. We're going to do row 2 where it's the same sequence, just we're going to start in a different order because we don't want our puff stitches just stacked on top of each other. We want them kind of staggered. So that's the end of row 1, and I'll see you for row 2. Okay, so for row 2, we're going to use the same stitch sequence that we did for row 1, but we're going to start in a different place. So instead of down here we did a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet, we're going to start with that last single crochet. So like I said, you always start in that first stitch where you slip to join. So this row, this sequence is the same, but we're starting with that final single crochet. So we're not going to chain 1 right now. So single crochet, go straight into your puff stitch like we did before. 3, 5, and 7. Pull it all the way through and chain. Now on this row, you kind of have a hidden stitch right here. We did our puff stitch, pull it over a little bit, and there's a stitch right there. Don't miss out on that one because that's the one we're going to skip. So now we're going to start that regular stitch sequence of the single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet, and then the puff stitch. So we'll just do this one more time. So 3, 5, kind of pull it up a little bit so that you have room to pull it all the way through. There's my 7, pull it all the way through, chain 1. Skip this next stitch, and do it all over again. So it's really the same thing as the row before, we just started in a different location. Skip that one, single crochet, puff stitch in this next one. So do that all the way around. I'll pick you up at the end of row 2. We'll slip stitch to join. Then we'll move on to row 3 and 4, which is going to be a repeat of row 1 and 2. But see, by doing it this way, our puffs are staggered. I don't really want it to look checkerboardy, but I don't want them stacked on top of each other either. So that's the reason we started this row in a different location, or a different part of our stitch sequence. So do that all the way around. I'll pick you up at the end to join. We'll slip stitch to join in our first stitch, and then we'll go quickly over rows 3 and 4. See you then. Okay, I'm near the end of row 2, where we've really been using the same stitch sequence as row 1. We just started from a different stitch. So I'm near the end. I just did one of my puff stitches and my chain. My chain is my 28th stitch. And this one that I'm skipping is one of those kind of hidden ones. So make sure you always count that. So this is 28. So 29 is my single crochet. 30 is my chain. Skip that one. In the row on that single crochet right there. All right, like I've been saying, we're going to slip stitch each row into our first, or at the end of each row, we're going to slip stitch to join on our very first stitch, which is that single crochet. Chain 1. That keeps our stitch count right if we do that each time. So that's the end of row 2. You can see our puffs looking pretty. And then, like I said, we'll quickly run through 3 and 4 because we're just going to repeat rows 1 and 2 again. But I'll go over them, at least the beginning of them, with you to get you started. So see you for rows 3 and 4. Okay, so we've done rows 1 and 2. So rows 3 and 4 are going to be a repeat of these 2 rows. A couple things I probably should mention. You might have noticed on row 2, sometimes your puff stitch fell in a chain stitch from row 1. And if you're like me, my chain stitches seem to be a little tighter than a regular stitch. And boy, it's kind of hard to get that puff stitch in a chain. So kind of be mindful to make your chain stitches a little loose. It might just help with your puff stitches, make them a little bit easier. And secondly, if you get to the end and your last stitch isn't falling like the pattern calls for, you've missed a stitch somewhere, and most likely it's going to be in one of those hidden stitches after your puff. So just be real mindful of that. Sort of pull your puff stitch over and make sure there's not a hidden stitch there. You'll be skipping it because of the chain on your puff, but if you don't notice that little hidden stitch, then it's going to throw off your stitch count, which isn't just a horrible thing, but you kind of want to keep your stitch count right. All right, so like I said, 3 and 4 are going to be a repeat of 1 and 2. So I'm going to start you off on row 3, and then I'll pick you up and start you off on row 4, just to get you going. So we slip stitch to join in our first single crochet, and that's where we're starting again. So just like row 1, we're going to start in that very same stitch. We start off with a single crochet, a chain, skip that next stitch, single crochet. That's in the top of that puff stitch. So single crochet, chain, skip, single crochet. Next stitch, you go right into your puff, which is 3, 5, and 7 loops. Grab your yarn, pull it through all 7, chain, make sure there's not a little hidden one there, skip, and then start it again. Now all this is written down in the video if you get confused as to where you are. Continue that sequence all the way around, slip stitch to join in our first single crochet, and I'll pick you up for row 4. See you for that. Okay, we're starting row 4, which is a repeat of row 2. And this is the row where we start off in a little different spot. So in that same stitch that we slip stitch to join, we do a single crochet, then we go right into our puff stitch on this row. So 3, 5, and 7. Pull it all the way through, chain 1, skip this one, and then we start our regular sequence again of the single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, is that a stitch? Yes, skip 1, single crochet, and then the puff stitch. So you'll do that all the way around, just like row 2. When you get to the end, slip stitch to join in that first single crochet, chain 1, and then the next few rows are going to be a little bit different. So row 4, you start with a single crochet, go right into your puff stitch, chain, skip 1, and then start your single crochet, chain, single crochet, puff. So do that all the way around, slip stitch to join in our first single crochet, and I'll pick you up for row 5. See you then. Okay, we're on row 5. We've done 4 rows of our sequence with the puff stitches. So now we need a break from all the chains and puffs and all that. So the next few rows are going to be simple. I've already chained 1. So for row 5, we start back in our same stitch like we've been doing that first stitch. All we're going to do for row 5 is place a half double crochet in each stitch around. Super, super simple. A much needed break. So my stitch count is 31. So I'll be placing 31 half double crochets, 1 in each stitch around. For row 5, when we get to the end, we'll slip stitch to join in this first half double crochet, chain 1, and I'll pick you up for row 6. See you then. Okay, we're on row 6. We just finished a super simple row of half double crochet. So, y'all know I have to get my half double crochet third loop in here somewhere. And that's what we're going to do for rows 6 and 7 is half double crochet third loop. I've already chained 1. So for the third loop, half double crochet third loop, pull it towards you a little bit. Here's our regular stitch with the front and back. Pull it towards you a little bit, and you'll find that third loop. On the first stitch, sometimes it's a little bit hard. Here's our regular stitch. Pull it towards you just a little bit, and see that sticking up right there, that stitch? That's the third loop. Put your hook in there, pull it up, work your half double crochet. So for rows 6 and 7, we're just going to place a half double crochet third loop in each stitch around. And if y'all have seen my other videos, you know what I'm going to say. I love this stitch because it makes this nice raised texture. It's going to give us a break between our puff row stitches. So for row 6, half double crochet third loop each stitch around. When you get to the end, slip stitch to join in this first stitch, chain 1. For row 7, do the same thing, half double crochet third loop each stitch around. And then I'll pick you up, I guess, at the end of row 7, and we'll slip stitch to join together before we move on. So row 6, half double crochet third loop, slip stitch to join, chain 1. Row 7, same thing, half double crochet third loop in every stitch. And I'll pick you up at the end of row 7. See you then. Okay, I'm at the end of row 7, which is the second row where we've been doing the half double crochet third loop. So I am on 29. There's that third loop when you pull it towards you. 30. And my last stitch is 31. We'll slip stitch to join in this first half double crochet stitch like we've been doing. We'll go ahead and chain 1. Okay, here's our first 7 rows. We had 4 rows of the puff stitch. They're kind of staggered, which I think looks really nice. Then we had a half double crochet row, and then 2 rows of half double crochet third loop. So I know that you can see this. It gives you that beautiful ridge which is just a perfect amount of texture, and it's going to separate our clumps of our puff stitch rows. So that's the end of that. Our next 4 rows, 8, 9, 10, and 11, are going to be a repeat of these. So we're going to do rows 1 and 2 more times. Then we'll get into our thumb row. Our thumb, this one will just have a little slit for our thumb, not an actual thumb. So that's the end of row 7, and I'll pick you up for rows 8, 9, 10, and 11. Okay, so like I said, the next 4 rows, we're going to repeat these first 4 rows, which is going to be row 1 and row 2 repeated twice. So we're going to kind of go through these pretty quickly because we've already done them. But I'll start you off on row 8, and I'll start you off on row 9, and then 10 and 11 are going to be a repeat of that. So just to refresh, our sequence is going to be, we start off with a single crochet in the same stitch as we slip stitch to join in. Then we'll chain 1 and we'll skip 1. Let's see, skip that one. And do another single crochet. So single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet. Then the next stitch is my puff stitch, where we put 7 loops on our hook, just like that. You draw your yarn all the way through, chain 1 to close, chain 1 to close it, and then skip the next one and start over again. So single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet again, single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet again, and then the puff stitch. So we're going to do that all the way around for row 8. We'll do this same sequence for row 10. So go ahead and finish row 8 with this sequence. I'll pick you up for row 9 just to refresh you on, sometimes it's hard to get it through. I'll pick you up for row 9 to refresh you on how we start that one. And then we'll do 10 and 11 off camera. And we'll pick up for the thumb row. So I'll see you for the start of row 9. See you then. Okay, we're starting on row 9. Which is the same as row 2. We're just repeating row 2 again. And it's the same stitch sequence as we just did. The normal stitch sequence, as you know, is single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet, and then the puff stitch. On this row, which is row 2 for row 9, we're just starting on that second single crochet before we get into the regular stitch sequence. So for this row, we start out with a single crochet, and then we go right into our puff stitch. So there's 3, 5, and 7. Pull it all the way through. Do a chain to close it. And then this is the row where sometimes this little stitch right here is almost hidden. Make sure that's the one you skip. Then we start with our regular stitch sequence. The single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet, and then straight into your puff stitch. So go ahead and do that all the way around for row 9. Now rows 10 and 11, you're just going to repeat these 2 rows again. So do this on row 9, slip stitch into your first stitch to join, then repeat these 2 rows one more time for rows 10 and 11. I'll pick you up at the end of row 11 just to see where we're at. And if it's confusing, I hope it's not confusing for you. You know it's going to be written down in the video and on the written pattern, but I think by now you probably have it. So finish out row 9, repeat these 2 rows again for 10 and 11, and I'll pick you up at the end of 11. See you then. Okay, I'm nearing the end of row 11, and I've just finished a single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet. So I'm going to end my row with a puff stitch. It's 5 and 7. Draw it through, chain to close, skip 1, and my last little stitches are a single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet. And that's how we end that row. Now when we do the other stitch sequence, like for row 1, we end with just that first single crochet. When we're doing a repeat of row 2, we end with single crochet, chain 1, single crochet. So that's the end of those 4 rows. Now we're going to do a repeat of these 3 rows, but it's going to be a little different because we're going to do our thumb slit. So I'll see you back for row 12. We'll have a much needed break from all this and do some easy half double crochets. See you for row 12. Okay, like I said, row 12 is going to be the start of our thumb slit row, and that'll take up 2 rows. Super simple. We're going to be working in regular half double crochets. And to make our thumb slit, we're going to half double crochet in our first 3 stitches. Just regular half double crochets in these first 3 stitches. Like that. My yarn is caught, sorry. Then we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we have to skip 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pick up here. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Skip 4 and start back with your half double crochets. And then we'll just finish out the row with these regular half double crochets. And then the next row, we'll kind of close that off so that we'll have a place for our thumb, a pretty place for our thumb. So start this row with 3 half double crochets, chain 4, skip 4, pick back up, half double crochet each stitch around, slip stitch to join in that first half double crochet. And when we come back, we'll do our 2 rows of half double crochet third loop, and we'll work around this chain area. But that's where our thumb will go. So half double crochet all the way around, except for these 4 chains. Slip stitch to join in this first one. I'll pick you up for the next row. Okay, we're on row 13. We just finished our half double crochets in these 4 chains for our thumb, so we have to work with that. Row 13, we're going to be working in half double crochet third loop again. So these first 3 stitches, we'll do a half double crochet third loop. It's 1, 2, and 3. But we can't half double crochet third loop around this area. So for these 4 chain spaces, just put a regular half double crochet around each of these chains. So that'll be 4 just regular half double crochets around this chain space here. That's 3 and 4. Then we're back to our regular stitches. We can pick back up with our half double crochet third loop like that. Oops, yeah. So we'll do 3 half double crochet third loops. We'll do 4 regular half double crochets around these 4 chains. Then we pick back up with the half double crochet third loop. And you finish off with the half double crochet third loop all the way back around after this area. Slip stitch to join. Then the next row, row 14, is half double crochet third loop in every stitch around. So go ahead and do this, 3 half double crochet third loops, 4 regular half double crochets around these chains, pick back up with your third loop, finish that off all the way around, slip stitch to join. Then row 14 is half double crochet third loop in each stitch around. So I'll pick you up for the end of row 14, and we'll talk about finishing out our glove. See you for that. Okay, I'm at the end of row 14, which is our second row of half double crochet third loop, except for these 4 when we were dealing with our thumb. So I'm on stitches 30 and 31. Now, if in the last few rows or at whatever point your stitch count has gotten off, this is a good time to kind of make up for that. If you get to the end and your stitch count is supposed to be 36 and you only have 35, just throw another half double crochet third loop in that last row and you'll get back to your stitch count. No stress crochet is my motto. So here's how that looks with our thumb. We worked around our thumb area. We have 2 clumps of these and then 2 sections of the third loop. I think it looks really pretty. So to finish off our glove, we're going to do just 1 repeat of these 2 rows again and then have a little ending on it. So we're almost there. I think it's looking really great. So I will join you for rows 15 and 16, and then we'll finish it off. See you then. Okay, like I said, rows 15 and 16 are just going to be a repeat of row 1 and 2. We're not going to do them twice. We're just going to do each of them one time. So I'm going to start you out for 15, and then I'll come back and start you out for 16 because we've done them both several times. So again, row 15 is a repeat of row 1, which is the one where we start off with the full sequence, which is a single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet, and then the puff stitch. 3, 5, and 7. Pull it all the way through, chain, skip 1, repeat, single crochet, chain, skip, single crochet, puff. So that's row 15, a repeat of row 1. So do that all the way around, slip stitch to join in this first stitch, and then I'll start you off on row 16, which is again a repeat of row 2, and we'll go from there, and then we just have a couple of tiny little rows to go. So I'll see you for the beginning of 16. All right, this is the start of row 16, and this is the last time we're doing these puff stitch rows. I know that's a great big hooray from everybody. So this is a repeat of row 2, where we start off in the middle of our sequence. So we start off with a single crochet, go right into our puff stitch before we start the full sequence, just like we've been doing when we have repeated row 2. So puff stitch, chain 1, there's that little hidden one that we skip. Then we start with the single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet, and then the puff stitch. I know y'all have got this down by now. So this is row 16. We've literally just got 2 little bitty rows left, I think, and we'll be done. So go ahead and work your sequence for row 16, which again is a repeat of row 2. Slip stitch to join here on the first stitch when you're through, and we're going to finish this thing out. So I'll see you in a bit. All right, this is row 17. We have this row and 1 more to go, and they're both very, very simple. No more puff stitch rows. So for row 17, all we're going to do is place a regular half double crochet in each stitch around. Super easy. 1 regular half double crochet in each of our stitches around. When you get to the end, you know what to do. You slip stitch to join in this first stitch. So half double crochet each stitch around, slip stitch to join, and we'll finish it off. See you in just a bit. All right, we've made it to the very last row. And I like to give my gloves a nice finished edge. So since we just did a row of half double crochet, we're going to do a third loop row, but we're going to do a single crochet third loop, which is exactly like the half double crochet third loop. You just do a single crochet. So find that third loop back there, just like we've been doing, but just work a single crochet. That's going to give us a nice finished edge. It's going to still give us that beautiful raised texture that we've been getting throughout the glove. And I think it's just going to finish it off nicely, and it's going to tie in with the rest of our glove. So single crochet third loop only all the way around. When you finish, slip stitch to join in that first single crochet, and this time we'll be able to tie off our yarn and cut. So I'll see you when we have finished this last row, and we'll look at our glove. See you for that. All right, here is our finished glove. I think it really looks nice. Here's that last raised row we did with the single crochet third loop. So it makes it look just like these, and I think it really just brings the whole glove together. We've got our nice ribbed cuff. We've got our puff stitch rows. We've got our little bit of texture with our third loop rows. Here's where our thumb will go. And I just think it looks beautiful. I wanted to show you a little trick that I do with this tail after you cut, because we have to weave our ends in. But I saw somebody on a video do this. When I finish anything like this, I take my hook and I draw it back and forth through these top stitches. Maybe just for 3 or 4 times, I just sort of weave it through like this. That way, when I do weave it in just at the bottom or somewhere, on the inside, it's going to be very secure. That thing is not going to come out. And it's already buried. That's just a little tip. So there's our glove. I hope you love it as much as I do. It really looks like it's difficult, but when it comes down to it, it was fairly easy, don't you think? Pretty simple stitches. So there it is. I hope you love it as much as I do. Thanks for joining me. If you liked this tutorial, I'd appreciate it if you'd share it with all of your crochet friends. Also, be sure and hit subscribe so you'll always get notified when the next tutorial gets posted. As always, there's more to come. Until then, happy hooking.